You can be first to market, or you can, compete on price, or you can create your own category. And that's where I kind of saw read the tea leaves on the shaker, where I'm like, man, this is a commodity. There's no way I can compete against $12 shakers. The most expensive shaker on Amazon was $50, or not even Amazon. The most expensive shaker I could find was like $50. I'm like, well, I got to invent enough things into this to be able to call it something different. And so that's where the hybrid cocktail shaker came into play.
Welcome to the Growth Mavericks podcast, where we know that entrepreneurship isn't just about strategy. It's about stamina. It's about disrupting your default and getting comfortable being uncomfortable so you don't burn out before you break through. I'm your host, Adam Callinan. Let's get to work. So what does it look like when a product designer with patents on cancer research tools and a bunch of work on the Garmin InReach decides to put everything on a cocktail shaker? That is what we get in today with Adam Kraft, the founder of Elevated Craft. Adam spent years as an industrial designer with 2 degrees from Arizona State University and ended up at the point where he was building these products for other companies, cranking out hundreds of designs a year. And the whole time recognizing that he wanted to build and own his own brand. So the way that he approached startup was very different than the typical approach to startup. Usually we have a problem, we solve our own problem. Turns out other people have that same problem. We start selling our solution to those people and boom, we have a company. He approached it from an entirely different direction, which is really unique, a really scientific sort of method in getting to the point of startup. So he launched that company on Kickstarter in 2019, which is right at the beginning of COVID. He had brand new twins at home and they crushed that Kickstarter campaign, which was a very designed outcome. They did $500,000 on Kickstarter and then turned that over to Indiegogo for a total of over $2 million in sales, like before they had even really made the product. It's really incredible. And that's amidst all the COVID shutdowns and hardship that came with creating product during that time, much less launching an entirely new brand. So it's a really, really interesting conversation and a spin on startup and building from an engineering mindset, a really creative engineering mindset that is particularly unique. So let's get into it.
So I went to school for industrial design, then had a little bit of I worked in industrial design, got to peek behind the curtain a little bit, did some trips to China, all through Southeast Asia and everything. And it was during the great financial recession or whatever was happening in 2008.
Yeah.
And all my friends were getting industrial design jobs and making like, $38,000 a year. And I was just completely tired of being a poor college student. So I did all kinds of side hustles in college to make pretty decent money. And I was like, man, I've peeked behind the curtain. I know what it means to be an industrial designer at these companies and it's super cool, but I need to make some money. So I actually got out of design for like 4 or 5 years basically doing sales in Texas. And then after that, I just had the itch that I needed to get back into making things. It was definitely not satisfying just to be doing something just for money. And so in 2013 or 2014, I moved back to Arizona, started a design and engineering consultancy with a partner. And then we built that over 5 or 6 years. And like I was saying, had all kinds of clients from toy companies to medical device companies to water bottle companies, which is actually where I might have met you, because when I met you at the OR show, I was still doing product design. And so anytime I'd see somebody with a vacuum insulated product, I was like, oh, I've worked on some of those. Let me talk to this guy. Maybe they need some work done. But yeah, that's kind of how it started before I started Elevated Craft. I was just designing stuff for other people. And one client we were on retainer for doing 100 products a year. So It was like a factory of just concept. That was a concept design part, but it would be literally, 10 products a month pretty much was the pace, and going to China all the time for them and stuff. So I put in the reps before starting my own brand.
That's a lot of products, 10 products a month. Yeah.
Yeah. It was.
So when you were in college, you went to ASU?
I did. Yep.
Okay. Mm-hmm. We don't need to talk about the fact that I went to U of A. When you were getting that degree, were you getting the degree because you loved that field or wanted to practice in that practice and you just didn't have visibility into what the industry looked like? Or did you kind of follow into it on accident?
Yeah. Fell into it on accident. I didn't know that industrial design was a degree. So I started off thinking, and for the first 2 years, I was like, well, I'll just be a mechanical engineer. I always liked to build stuff. And, from the time I was like 4, I built like a piece of the equivalent of like a piece of IKEA furniture by myself. My parents came out and like, what? Like, how did you do this? It's like, that's just the way my brain worked. It's like, and to put stuff together. And then in high school, I was really good in art. And so those things kind of crossed over. But then I got to college and I literally did not know that industrial design was that you could be a product designer as a career. So I thought mechanical engineering, did that for like 2 years. And then my brother saw a flyer in the design school with a description of what industrial design was. And they had kind of, kids were designing shoes and doing all this stuff. I'm like, changing my major. That's it. And it was a 4-year degree that, that you couldn't use any of your previous, like you had all the studio time. So I just started college over. So I was like 2.5 years in, and I just started college over. But it did allow me to get 2 degrees. But it was one of the greatest decisions I've ever made. Getting that exposure there and happening to be at a school that actually had an industrial design program that was pretty good. They only accepted like 40 students a year. And so it was a good program, but
So you moved away from, I mean, mechanical engineering is very heavily mathematical
right.
science. And so moving into industrial, I would imagine was a lot more arts and creativity focused than the maths and
Yeah.
the sciences.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we had to take, physics and different things to kind of ground us, but it was much more around design principles and uh a lot of CAD work too. So that was kind of the
Oh
crossover
yeah.
where, as I was getting into the mechanical engineering side, it's like they weren't making anything. I don't know if maybe in the master's program they started getting studio classes, but it was all theoretical. And so this was much more hands-on. So I was able to use my engineering brain for thinking through those things. And especially whenever you get into CAD modeling, that was, heavy on that. And so it was veering kind of away from the artistic side, figuring out what it meant to, what good design was, which I can't, maybe by my last project senior year, I could say like, oh, that kind of clicked because I just made a bunch of crappy stuff the whole time, but I was learning, I was just like putting in the time.
Yeah. That's a really cool way to get, out of, obviously it maybe took you a little bit longer to get out of school than was intended or desired, but the balance of like that heavy fundamental mathematical infrastructure, physics based infrastructure, compounded by the artistic creative side is super cool. I mean, you don't hear about that. That's really rare. It's one or the other. It's never both.
Yeah. Yeah. I was thankful that the degree exists and that it was also a Bachelor of Science. So it was more kind of science based. Because some programs can be lean into more fine art based, but because I was a decent art student, but I wasn't like phenomenal. So I was kind of like a decent design student. I got better over time. And then by senior year, I landed a really good internship at this brand called Boon, Boon. They I don't know which year they sold, but they were making baby gear and they would do the trade shows a lot. And I was, me and another guy were their first interns. It was like the coveted position. Everybody applied for at the design school. Me and this other guy got it. He was qualified very much in that he was really into toy design. And so he could sort of meld that over. And on my end, I think the founder just saw how scrappy I was. And she's like, he'll just do anything for, to make the designs cool, to go to trade shows, do whatever. So that's kind of where I got that first peek behind the curtain of, what it meant to figure out planograms for Target. And, we would 3D print stuff and put it in a packaging and fake it. And then she would go pitch it to Target and it wouldn't even exist yet. It was like this really cool time for watching those things happen in an office of, 6 people or something. And then, went on from there after graduating, but it was a good experience.
Heck yeah. I mean, there's a lot to be taken and gleaned from this. And we kind of cover it a little bit earlier in that it's all about the reps. It's literally like there are no shortcuts. There's not a fast, hack to the thing. It's really just a matter of the reps and taking the time and dedicating to it for as long as it
Yeah.
takes.
I think too, like recognizing when you're in a good place and you can make some sacrifice. Like in that, I was already, I don't know how old I was. I was like in my late 20s or something by the time I'm graduating, and I'm working an internship making like 12, $14 an hour. And it goes from like 3 months to 6 months to like nearly a year. And I'm doing trade shows and everything else. But other friends were getting jobs. And I thought, this exposure is worth it. And and it totally was. And so, um, same with the design and engineering consultancy. Whenever I had that, it was kind of feast or famine. But whenever we'd get the exposure with working on a project and getting to see kind of a peek behind the scenes, like we did the Garmin InReach device. We worked on that original one. It
Really?
was at a time, yeah. That was like probably one of our first big jobs. Garmin, in the process of doing that, Garmin bought another company, an old map making company. So the InReach started out in another company's hands. So they're technically the ones that hired us, but during the process, Garmin bought them and transitioned over. But that was crazy. I mean, this is just starting this design engineering consultancy. We were hitting up US manufacturers to try to get leads. So we just literally walk in and be like, "Hey, we design stuff. If you have any crazy inventors that walk in, send them our way because we know you don't want to deal with these guys." Somebody sent us the Garmin InReach opportunity. We put together a quote, and I think our original quote was like, $20,000 or $12,000 something. And they literally sent it back and they're like, this isn't enough.
Yeah.
Like, you don't know what you're doing.
Yeah.
Like you literally, because we're like, okay, let's charge like $60 an hour. And then we'll put like, 100 hours into this. And they're like, and then we'll double it. And,
Yeah.
whatever it was.
Yeah.
And they literally sent it back. They're like, you guys obviously don't know what you're doing, but they saw something in us that we were, well, maybe the cheapest option, and that they had all their in-house engineers too. So it was design focused with just coming up with like, we were sort of uh, the extras on the bench when everybody else was like, didn't want to do that project. But it turned out, my business partner ended up going to Taiwan and building the molds for them. And the same features that we designed back then are in the newest InReach, how the SOS door works and different things. So yeah, that was sweet. I mean, we definitely underbid it. There's no doubt about that, and had no idea what we were doing, but the risk was like, well, we're selling time. I think like at the end of that first year, we did that project, we did a handful more, and we both paid ourselves like $48,000, and I'm like, and we're like, yes.
Rich.
But
Yeah.
yeah, but it
That's
was
amazing.
fine. We had
Yeah.
we had saved up money, and we were literally just like, we got to get the experience. And that's where it started, and that was like 2013, 2014.
That's epic. We have, I mean,
Yeah.
I live in Montana and I spend a lot of time in the woods in the backcountry, and my InReach Mini 2 is a critical part of my backcountry pack. And I can tell you that
Yeah.
that trap door that you created has only been opened one time. And it was by one of my kids in the garage who pushed the button and then
Oh,
shared.
geez.
And I didn't know. Just like cops showed up in my house all of a sudden. They were like, thought somebody got kidnapped. They had to do a
Amazing.
house search because one of my kids turned it
Oh
on
my God.
and pushed the button.
Amazing
It worked.
technology.
Yeah, it worked.
Yeah.
It did what it was supposed to
Yeah.
do.
Yeah. That
Uh,
was definitely a cool thing. And the CAD modeling behind that was intense because it involved the co-molded TPU outside and a hard substrate and figuring out the molding and stuff. And that was really where my business partner at the time, I knew I could do a lot of the heavy lifting on the design leading into it, but he had been doing more on the engineering side for, I don't know, 8 years before that, doing medical devices. And so we kind of paired up and made it work. But we had no right to be hired by them. That's for sure. We
that's
made
awesome.
it work, but yeah, there were definitely more qualified firms out there.
The fake it till you make it. That's perfect.
Yeah, for
Amazing.
sure. Yeah.
So fast forwarding, you're doing design stuff and cranking out 10 products a month for a toy company in China or wherever.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And how do you come up with the idea for Elevated Craft, or your first product line at Elevated Craft?
Yeah. Earlier in starting the design engineering consultancy, I looked at that as a kind of a funnel. I thought, man, it's really hard to sell hours as a career. And it had to scale up with labor if we wanted to get bigger and make more money. And I didn't feel like I was that great at hiring and that kind of thing. And so early on, I thought, okay, somebody's going to walk in the door and want to, bring me on as an equity partner, or, there'll be an inventor that is doing something cool and we'll partner up, or I'll make my own brand. And so 3, 4, 5 years goes by. We get a couple of those offers where the inventors are like, I want to be partners with you. And it's like, you know, you don't want to get married to
Yeah,
somebody
that's
like that.
where my brain
You
goes. It's like, you just had a
yeah,
wedding proposal to a stranger. That
you
sounds
realize early on, they're like, I can't pay you anything, but if you're my business partner, I'll give you half of everything, that kind of thing. So we had the crazy pitches. We entertained a couple of them whenever somebody would be like a more qualified, like we had some, I think it was like an IBM electrical engineering VP or somebody like that comes in and they're doing stuff, but none of it really materialized in a way that felt, you know, like it was going to be worth putting the next 10 years behind. And so then I really just started focusing on, what would it mean to make my own brand? And since I could kind of design anything I wanted, I actually started with the brand name, with the brand Elevated Craft. And whenever I came up with that, I saw that it was available for trademark. I was like, okay, I'll start designing some prototypes and things underneath the umbrella of Elevated Craft to just try to think through, what things could hit. And so I did a bunch of research and designs in like cold brew coffee. I was looking into kitchenware, I'm thinking like craft beer. Maybe I could make kegs or, whatever, those kind of things. And then eventually landed on the cocktail shaker as something I thought I could really get under the hood of and knock out of the park. And so that's kind of where the design part of it started. So the brand started first, worked through some designs for, I don't know, maybe 6, 8 months to a year before landing on the flagship product, which was the cocktail shaker.
how did you launch that product? You did crowdfunding, right?
Yeah,
Was it
I did. Yep. Well, I think to kind of take a step back from the launch itself, it was kind of a time and a place in my life. So my we had bought a house. My wife and I were talking about having kids. She gets pregnant as this design is coming along, and I'm thinking, literally freaked out. Like I'm just not making enough money to pay for diapers and stuff. Like I was, but I was also just uh super scared. And so Kickstarter was an option. And after going through the prototyping process and building out the models and everything, then it became kind of the only option, right? It was like, I can't risk too much of this, and I think I'd put like 30 grand of my own money into prototyping and all this sort of stuff. And so whenever it came to launch, it was like it had to work. And so yeah, it launched on Kickstarter. I did that as a entrepreneur at that time. So it was just me, the baby. We ended up having twins, by the way, boy girl twins. And so they
amazing?
were born in 2019. And so I launched whenever they were about 6 months old, I think. So that entire time that my wife was pregnant, I was trying to figure out Kickstarter, being a student of it, listening to all the podcasts, reading all the books and everything, really wrap my head around marketing on it and like what made a successful Kickstarter. And then had to build out the campaign and all that stuff for like the first 6 months of their life. So I remember holding them in like a rocking chair, going through the script of the video and trying to figure out the lines that would pitch the product. Like, what is the pitch? It's like I designed something. I'm like, all right, how do I sell this thing? And that was where it started. Yeah. Little babies at home and a dream to launch the product, and Kickstarter as the avenue for
And
sure.
were you still working in design at the time you were doing this?
I was, yeah. I was still doing design and engineering projects, but it was fairly automated. We had that toy company that was paying us. That kind of like paid the bills. That was where we were doing we're on contract to do 100 products a year. So I was able to do the concept work on those. And I was just, working late nights, weekends was, it was
Yeah.
everything I could do, to get it going. But yeah, still on that.
So if you launched, was there anything that you did before or during the Kickstarter to try to prove concepts out? Or was the Kickstarter like the proof of concept?
Yeah, I don't know. I had a lot of conviction going into it. I think it was, well, let's just say this. I think I built out a bunch of models and figured out where I needed my ROAS to be and all that kind of stuff. And I called it like brute force math. So I'm not like an expert on Excel or anything, but I'm just going through and hammering out everything. I'm like, well, if we're getting this kind of return on ad spend, here's my credit card limits. And I had and so I have like great credit. And so I'm looking at these credit cards. I have like 90K available balance, 65K, 90. I'm like, okay, personally, I could scale this on credit cards. Kickstarter pays off in 14 days, so I can pay it back before it ever hits interest. So I had it all kind of worked out in my head. And I hadn't placed the first PO yet. So it was kind of like, all right, am I ordering 5,000 of these and just sending them straight to Amazon, or am I going to have a successful Kickstarter? Because I was going to launch the product, and I had known it. I knew enough about Amazon that literally my backup plan, like if everything failed, I'm like, well, I know I can sell these on Amazon for more than what I bought them from China. This is 2018, so it didn't feel that risky. I actually thought it was like there's no way this won't be, and levels of success too, right? So I thought, if I do 50K, that's enough to get like an investor excited later on down the road. If I do 100K, then that's enough to maybe get on a Shark Tank or whatever else. And I hadn't really thought through the next steps after that. It was just kind of like anything beyond that is good enough, because the work I put in, I'm like, man, I got to at least do 100K on this. Like I put in freaking, so much effort on this thing. It's got to work. And it ended up working out really well. But
How did you get eyeballs to that Kickstarter? Quick break, and this one is personal. Your ROAS is lying to you. I know this because mine lied to me for years. When I was building Bottle Keeper, I'd see a 4x ROAS or 5x ROAS, and I think we were absolutely crushing it. When we get to the end of the month, we'd see our P&L, and we barely broke even. Now, the dashboards and the platforms, all the things would say one thing. The bank account and the P&L said something entirely different. They were disconnected. The problem wasn't ads. It wasn't marketing efficiency. It's that those output metrics like ROAS and MER, they don't account for all the stuff that crushes your margins. These are things that are shipping and fulfillment, credit card fees, Shopify fees, the marketing agency we're using, the paid media itself. That's the only thing that ROAS accounts for. But there's all these other expenses. So I built this framework that starts with net profit and works backwards to tell you exactly how to spend ad budget and how the ROAS needs to perform in order to hit your net profit target. These aren't benchmarks. It's literally your numbers and expenses based on what's happening in your business. And best of all, I'm giving these secrets away for free in a profit masterclass that I created recently. It's the exact system I used at Bottle Keeper to get to over 60 million in total sales with just 4 employees and 0 investors, ultimately to a private equity acquisition. So you can find this profit masterclass at pentane.com. But for now, let's get back to the show.
this pro it hasn't changed that much. But I mean, at the time we did I did a email lead gen campaign leading up to it about 2 weeks before. One of the things actually that I knew nothing about digital marketing. And so one of my kind of milestones along the way was, make an awesome product to start, then make an awesome video for Kickstarter. Then it was, oh crap, how do I market this? And the leading agency at the time was called Jellup, and they're still around. They just focus on Kickstarter. And so I was like, well, if Jellup brings us on, because they were a commission only based marketing agency, like if they bring us on and they agree to do the project, and that I saw that they worked on every other like really successful project, including the biggest ones around. And so whenever they agreed to take on the project, then I was like, okay, I should be good to go, but they suggested doing a email lead gen campaign leading up to it. I think I put in like $3,500 or something. At the time they would say, I think if you could acquire an email for less than $2, you were doing okay. If you could acquire it for $1, you're probably doing really good. And anything less than that, you might have like a hit. And I think, potentially a lot of trust has been lost on Kickstarter at this point. I don't really know. But at the time, the email lead gen did awesome. We were getting leads at like 70 cents an email. So that $3,500 generated, 5,000 emails or whatever it was. So that became the initial, day 1, 2, 3, because Kickstarter is all about having the first like 3 days of the campaign have to be rocket ships or it just falls flat. It's really hard to recover after that. So that playbook worked, and still today, it's if we we do plan on doing another Kickstarter this summer, and the plan will be to kind of drip it out to our email list and get them to get some excitement build up, a few weeks before, and just like any other product launch. Um, but yeah, that was how we got the eyeballs and paid ads at the time. Um, Kickstarter didn't have any ability to have Facebook Pixel or anything on there, so tracking attribution was all through UTM links.
Yeah.
And so we just ran ads. Jellup ran the ads and the Google ads, and I just kept agreeing to let the budget ride, and also my ROAS boundary was they couldn't go below 4x ROAS. Imagine that, like, these days, right? It's like it's impossible to get. And I was like, you
Yeah.
guys can spend as much as you want, but don't go below 4x ROAS. And they were able to do it. So the campaign was extremely profitable too. Like, and I didn't even know. Like my actual goal was just don't lose money on this campaign. Like I charged way accidentally, like way overcharged on shipping and all that stuff. But we can talk about that more.
Go ahead.
But yeah, it was a good time to be launching a Kickstarter, I think.
So what did that first campaign do revenue wise?
So let me think about that. Just under 500K on Kickstarter. And then at the time, a common thing was to roll it right over to Indiegogo in demand.
Really?
And then it went on to do another $2 million in Indiegogo.
What?
So yeah.
So you crushed your 50,000 your
Yeah.
$50,000 worst case
Right.
scenario. That's incredible.
Like, yeah, nearly 500K from Kickstarter. And that was kind of the core audience. And then the way it worked back then was that on Indiegogo in demand, it would say, however many people, 5,000 people back to this on another platform, and it generated, $479,000. So that gave it kind of like validity. So it was kind of a post launch strategy. And, this wacky thing was happening at the same time called COVID that hit right in the middle of my Kickstarter. Yeah. So that was fun. And that kind of, I'm sitting on this Kickstarter money at the point that I'm thinking like I need to place POs and stuff. So my campaign ran from October to November of 2019. And then I'm getting into that part of like, I need to ramp the factories up. You get past Chinese New Year, and all of a sudden March, 2020, it's like factories are shutting down, and I'm sitting on this Kickstarter money.
And they
I'm like,
literally
I can't.
just opened up, like, right? I mean, Chinese New Year is in February, right around
Right.
Christmas.
Yeah, exactly.
Just opening up.
But then I started, way in advance. I started hearing hearing things that something was going down. Right. So, and then all of a sudden, I am at this place where I need to start really ramping up production. I've got the money. I got in with a new manufacturer. So the people that initially were doing the prototype kind of weren't able to pull it off correctly. And so it was enough to do some videos with, but not enough to actually come to, to do mass production with. It wasn't working out. And so yeah, it was at that point where I'm like, I have to launch this product, and all the factories are shut down, and I'm sitting on like, $500,000 Kickstarter cash. And then the other one starts rolling, and it's just like the money's kind of building up, which is, i.e. like my responsibility to deliver on these goods is also building. So I wasn't like spending any of it. I was staying home doing nothing but trying to build the company. Yeah. And it was a pretty scary time. Like, there's no doubt about that. But I had complete conviction that I was going to deliver the products. It was kind of like how to time it in a way that I could responsibly put money into the factories that aren't going to go out of business. And so it was this crazy game of chess. And I was just solopreneuring it, trying to work through these things. And, the big thing that worked out was that a lot of Kickstarter campaigns go sideways. Like, if you ever read the comments on, there'll be a successful Kickstarter campaign, and you'll read the comments like, this is a scam.
Yeah.
They didn't deliver
later,
on
they
time.
haven't delivered their product. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I want my money back, all that sort of stuff. And so I was just so determined to not let the campaign go sideways that I did everything I could do to film videos of myself just like this. And I'd be talking about the product and holding it up and being like, here's the latest prototype, to, really doing some like, I don't know, like getting my MBA in PR type thing where I'm thinking about like, okay, I've got this information, but I can't let it out this week because I already gave this other message and that needs to kind of like percolate into the audience. So next week I'll tell them about this, tooling delay that we have, or that, the factories are closed down or whatever, right? So it was such a gnarly time, but that's what allowed those sales to continue to build because there was trust there. So as things were shut down, people saw that I was on there a lot and communicating well with them, and so the sales kept coming in. The pre-sales kept coming in, uh, and then eventually I was able to deliver the first like 10,000 units or something like that, or 5,000 units. So it was enough that then I had like the haves and the have-nots. So there's like enough people out there to write things about it, and all the people that were still waiting. And I'm like, sorry, the factory's still shut down. I don't know what to tell you, but your stuff is coming.
Yeah, it's
So yeah,
amazing
so
how
that's
communication solves most problems.
for
Like
sure.
everywhere,
Yeah.
personally,
And
professionally, just sort of across the board.
yeah, being able to have that. I mean, the biggest benefit I think to somebody launching a Kickstarter even today is having that dialogue with the actual people that are putting the money behind it, and to do it in such a it's pretty high stakes because it's all public. I mean, the comments section, and these super backers know that they're not going to private DM you their concern. They're going to make sure they put it on the public forum that
Yeah.
any consumer can click on. And you have to go like, okay, how do I answer this like authentically? But also they may be asking for something that's just not possible, where it's like, I need you to cover the duties to send this to Sweden because shipping's so high. So you have to do this. You have to, like basically threatening you publicly. And you have to be like, I don't, or telling you that you have to change the design because of X, Y, Z, and why the design is bad. And you're like, I already got the molds being built, so it's it's definitely a public arena for it. But if you do it well, then you get those fans for life. And I think it goes to that sort of like 1,000 True Fans that Kevin Kelly wrote about, that article, that really stands true. Is like, get 1,000 people that are really backing you. It kind of, you can build a company around it. So that's
There's
what we did.
also a tremendous amount of value to be driven by crisis and how you deal with crisis. I mean, we dealt with that in Bottle Keeper countless times where something got destroyed or lost or blew up, or a ship sunk in the middle of the ocean with a bunch of product on it, like whatever, everything that could happen
Yeah.
would happen. And how you deal with that, I mean, is how
Yeah.
you get those people from angry to your like best customers ever.
Yeah. I have a hilarious kind of thing that popped up. I think it's funny. I don't know if anybody else will, but so on Kickstarter, there was some things that came out with the original cocktail shaker, which I don't have it in front of me. I have our latest one. But on the inside, one of the core things that made it kind of Kickstarterable was, I call this basically coined the term hybrid cocktail shaker because it has gaskets so it doesn't leak. It also has threads so it threads on, and it's got a built-in measuring top. And that was kind of the aha moment that I felt made it Kickstarterable. It's also vacuum insulated so it doesn't freeze your hand. The part of the Kickstarter side was that nobody had put a giant measuring top in the top of a cocktail shaker. They just put like a little 1 ounce one in the lid, and you had to pour it 500 times for making a batch of margaritas. And so that was the kind of invention that made me know that I thought I would do well on Kickstarter because it had that like, but wait, there's more aspect to it, right? So, but on Kickstarter, I because I didn't have any sway with the factories, the original one, I had to make a lot of concessions in the design for where the factory's like, nope, we can't do that. Nope, we can't do that. Sorry, we can't do that. And
Classic.
one of those was,
Yeah.
yeah, the original factory. So the original design on the inside of the measuring top has this kind of stair step design. So it's like you get it up to step number 1, that's 1 ounce. Step number 2 is 2 ounce, and so on. And I didn't have any other like embossed lettering on there. So it didn't say 1, 2, 3, or 4 because I thought of it as like kind of like directionally correct, not absolutely correct on measurements. Like you just need a proportion. I want 2 ounce of tequila, 4 ounce of margarita mix, or whatever. And on Kickstarter, they were like, the backers were like, oh, you really need to put this on. And by the way, put 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. by the way. It needs to be in milliliters also. And so now I'm like dialing the design to make it work for both milliliters and ounces.
Yeah.
Um, but in that process, they also kind of called out that having the halfway mark. So some people are like, it's fine that it does the whole marks, but I have to estimate where the halfway mark is. And so in the font, let's say that it says 2 ounces and it's 2 OZ. I put a line above the OZ that indicates the halfway mark in the stair step. And uh, it's not a font you could like just look up where it like auto puts this on. It was just like kind of part of the design. The part that goes full circle is Hexclad launched a shaker with this is like a couple months ago. They launched with Snoop Dogg and Dr. Dre. They completely copied the exact font, like the exact. So it says 2 ounce with the line over it, and I'm like, that was literally the bad design. Like I literally had to like reverse this into the design to try to like go, oh shit, I have to do half tick marks,
Sure.
and come 6 years later, I'm like kind of like knocked off by Hexclad on this part of it. So it's like they made the inferior version of our shaker because
Awesome.
the new one is I I had the sway with the factory and we've sold enough units and stuff that I could make whatever I wanted. So I made exactly the shaker that I wanted. The original one was, it created the category of hybrid cocktail shakers and it's very good. It has tons of reviews and all that sort of stuff. But yeah, it was between Kickstarter backers and then seeing it come full circle. And I'm like, why would they copied that one little feature of it that's like, it should have never been there. There's so many better ways of doing it than the way I originally did it. But
That's
hey,
fantastic. There-
yeah,
Flattery,
yeah, exactly.
like the
That's,
classic. What was the saying? Imitation is the cheapest form of flattery or
I
something.
think when we first crossed paths at the outdoor retail show, I think that's something you said where you were dealing with a lot of knockoffs, even at the show. You were
That would have been in
yeah, I'm walking
2000.
around.
We got our first patent in 2000, November 29th, 2016. And then we spent the next 2 years and an incredible amount of money defending them and creating all the structure so that we could defend them on Amazon. We had to sue a bunch of small companies to get consent judgments, not to ruin their lives, just to get them to stop and sign a thing that's they agreed they violated our patents. So we could get consent judgments to then use as a registration number in Amazon. And that took forever. And then
Just
like
crazy.
it's just the whack-a-mole game from
Yeah, yeah.
and there's a lot of systems and things that we could build to automate it, but it was like every time you see a fake version of your product on a shelf somewhere on a website or at a trade show, it's like a gut punch
Yeah.
forever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. We deal with it all the time too. I've filed tons and tons of patents, and thankfully the Amazon brand registry now exists, and you can kind of do a little bit of defense work on there.
Yeah, that's
TikTok
changed.
has their IP
Yeah.
back end also.
Yeah, and in
Um,
the Amazon side, they had brand registry. They've had that for a while, but it has changed a lot.
yeah.
You used
Well,
to
what do they
get
call it?
brand registry. You can now fight about it without having
Right,
to
the Apex. You can make an Apex claim that somebody violated on your side, and so
you have to put up money, like you have to put up 5 grand or
mm,
something. And if they don't
yeah,
put up 5 grand to fight about it, then you just win by default,
right, yeah,
which is way better
yeah,
than what it used to be. They used to just say pound sand, cool patent, go get a court to validate the patent and we will enforce on it. So we had to spend a year
yeah,
and $500,000 going to get those freaking numbers. And it worked really well once then, because then it's, once we had the numbers, because then it wasn't Amazon making the
hmm
determination whether or not the patent was valid. The courts, like a US court system, had said the patent is valid.
yeah.
It was a brutal
Did you
process.
feel like ultimately was there an ROI on
But yeah,
the
it's why
cost
we
and
sold
effort?
the company for what we sold it for and to who we sold
Yeah.
it to. They were the private equity group that acquired Bottle Keeper in 2021. It's called Windpoint Partners. They, in the first 4 or 5 hours of conversations we had with them they had just acquired Arctic Outdoors, like RTIC Outdoors, 6 months before us. They did not ask one time in those 4 or 5 hours of conversations what our revenue was, if we were profitable. Like they did not care at all. All they wanted was our 42 patents and our brand was premium. Like we had our gross margins were like 85%. And Arctics were not. That was an entirely different business model. So those are the only two things that they cared about. But the patent portfolio is what drove that transaction.
That makes you feel better. We file a lot. We get a lot issued, and then all of a sudden you have to continue paying more and more. Like I have a lot of Chinese patents too, and every year it's like another $600 or whatever it costs to like do all these continuations. I'm like, this was issued. I thought I owned the IP now. What the heck? So it becomes the gift that keeps costing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was interesting, like with the on the IP front. I mean, kind of on the IP front, back to kind of when I started Elevated Craft, I was reading tons and tons of business books, and I'm sure we all go through this in our lives at different times. And one of those was, I think it's called Play Bigger, and some consultant guys wrote it, and I think it's one of those. They seem like cool guys, but I think it's one of those like I'm going to write this book so that I can get paid by McKinsey to come in and do speeches or whatever it is. But the whole concept was you becoming a category king. And so it's like you can do a few different things. You can be first to market, or you can, compete on price, or you can create your own category. And that's where I kind of saw read the tea leaves on the shaker, where I'm like, man, this is a commodity. There's no way I can compete against $12 shakers. The most expensive shaker on Amazon was $50, or not even Amazon. The most expensive shaker I could find was like $50. I'm like, well, I gotta invent enough things into this to be able to call it something different. And so that's where the hybrid cocktail shaker came into play, which is then now, it's kind of played out exactly how I hoped it would, where it's become a category. Now there's, competition in there, which is fine. And we have patents that we can defend and that sort of thing. But ultimately, I wanted the consumers to know about this new type, that there was a new way to do the cocktail shaker. If it was just going to be compared with any other cocktail shaker, there's no way we could charge $70 for it. And that was initially what we did. It was like, I'm like, man, there's at least most expensive shakers $50. I'm like, I've been working my butt off on this for like 18 months. I'm like, there's at least $20 worth of value in this, additional value in this.
There's
And
really, really good data points inside of that thesis that we executed at BottleKeeper as well, that I end up spending a lot of time with Pentane clients talking about, which is around being able to add margin dollars, which is effectively where your profit comes from, into the product by adding value to it and being able to increase the prices as a result. Like at BottleKeeper,
right.
our very first product was $20. And I felt like that was expensive. And to me, it was expensive. I mean, it cost $4 to make or whatever it was, and we sold it for $20. We added things to that product over 2 years, like a tether to the cap, and we added powder coating, and we built a bottle opener into the lid, and
Hmm.
things that probably cost less than $1 in total.
Right.
And
Yeah.
we tested the price up in that product to $40, and successfully, like it worked
Nice.
amazing.
Yeah. Yeah.
So your point on adding all those things that the customer perceives as valuable is
Hmm.
is incredible, because today, like in the world of e-commerce, it's wildly different than it was 10 years ago, and what it costs to acquire a customer is wildly different than it was 5 years ago, 7 years
For
ago,
sure.
right? So being able to
Yeah.
add the value to the product to be able to drive the price up because you've added perceived value is like mission critical. And I think
Yeah, for sure.
it's overlooked a lot.
Right. I think the design term would be value engineering. So we'll go through things, and you find these little areas where you can add a lot of value without it costing a ton of money. And it's usually tied to user experience in my
Totally.
experience. Yeah, the better you can deliver on that, then and sometimes it doesn't cost that much. It could be packaging, it could be just better quality materials or weight. Perceived value is another thing that we talk about a lot. It's like if it doesn't feel like it's quality, then you lose. Even if it is, you don't want to have to justify it. You can just have people feel the product and they know it's good.
Yeah. There's definitely a touch and feel component to that. So in shifting gears a little bit, looking back at your startup story with Elevated Craft, doing it while with newborn twins. I mean, I have kids, I don't have twins. So that adds like a whole other element of complexity to my brain. And then doing it into COVID and in the post-COVID world, which is different. It's just different from a consumer standpoint. The e-commerce world is different. It's not better or worse necessarily, it's just different. How have you survived that? Like, are there things that you have implemented into your life in order to kind of withstand these insane ups and downs that we all deal with?
Uh, yeah. I mean, I think like I stay really grounded about what it's all about, what it's for, and I'm really focused on being a good dad. And so I I hardly ever open my laptop at home. It's just not. It doesn't mean I don't check some Slack things on my phone or something, but I just find that there's a time for me to work and there's time for me to be a dad. And I keep those, very separate. And it's come naturally because there was a time where, when we were first starting, I simply could not do anything else. You know what I mean? Like I couldn't at the point that I'm home, there's two kids, there's two parents, one of us has one has the other. If I'm taking care of one, it's so that my wife could get 2 hours of sleep, and then, we're kind of going back and forth. So it wasn't like, I was putting in the mental reps on thinking through things. But ultimately it's about kind of that balance there. And I think being a parent sort of forces that balance. It's a force function to it. Is before being a parent, I mean, I was a complete workaholic. It didn't like, I would, if I was into a project, I didn't have friends for 6 months. It didn't matter. Like I would just do that. Like I would just do the work thing. So I think that's been the biggest balance, and just, getting outdoors. If I'm stressed out about something, it's like the ultimate reset is just get in the woods and brain turns off and you get to be out there enjoying nature. Um, I think that's the biggest things. I mean, there's all kinds of tools and things we use in business that's made things easier on how we think about, you know, investing in stuff and product development, sort of how that's changed over time. But the personal life is turn it off, be with the kids,
Yeah, that's great. And clearly defined priorities can be really helpful. Super helpful in that and trying to separate those things. Amazing. Where do you want people to find you, find Elevated Craft, all your
just
updates, your on?
what's that? Updates, just elevatedcraft.com. Pretty straightforward on there. Yeah, we have this is our second Kickstarter that came out. I'm not sure if this will show up, but this is called a hybrid cocktail glass, a glass insert. But we're launching a new colorway tomorrow. This is the brushed Aurora finish. So we're starting to get into a little bit of colorways, but this summer planning on doing another Kickstarter if we can get everything lined out with the factories and whatnot. And so I would keep an eye on that for launching 4 new major SKUs this year, but inside of there's sub SKUs. So it's actually, our product line's gonna more than double this year. So yeah, so that's super exciting. Last year was hard with tariffs and things to do much of anything productive, and so this year it's kind of like stabilized enough that we're launching things. But yeah, elevatedcraft.com is the place.
Awesome. I look forward to seeing that stuff. I love watching the product cycles on products like this come out. It's so cool. So we'll make sure the links and everything are in the show notes so you can find them there. Awesome. Well, thanks a ton for coming, Adam. I really appreciate the time.
Yeah,
Super fun.
thanks for having me. All right, cheers.
Awesome. A huge thanks to our guests today. Don't forget, this is powered by Pentane Financial and Advertising Command Center for Consumer Brands. Stop what you're doing, put your phone down, walk away from the computer screen, go outside, get some air, do something hard, push your limits, get uncomfortable, become more durable and more resilient, create the stamina required to get through those entrepreneurial barriers, stay in the game for as long as you can, and we will see you next time.